Hi there. In this video, we're going to go over how watching porn affects your brain. My name is Christopher, and I'll guide us through this today. So, something I think is very important to understand when it comes to watching pornography and addiction is this idea of the Coolidge effect. So, this comes from a study that was in the Journal of Neuroscience, and they basically said that the Coolidge effect is behind the power of internet porn. So, the Coolidge effect is a phenomenon seen in the mammalian species whereby males, and to a lesser extent females, exhibit renewed sexual interest if introduced to new receptive sexual partners, even after refusing sex from a prior but still available sexual partner. Sexual novelty overrides this habituation with renewed excitement caused by higher dopamine. A continual stream of novelty is what makes internet porn so different from porn of the past. So, just to speak to this a little bit, the study that was done was a study that was done with lab rats. And so basically, what they did is they took rats and they measured their brains beforehand, and they basically gave the rats chemicals to sort of make them sexually active. They did this with both the male and the female rats. Um, and what ended up happening was that the male rats, when having sex with a similar partner, eventually reached this point of sexual satisfaction. And when offered the opportunity to have sex with that female rat again, they ended up rejecting it. They reached a point of satiation when it came to their sexual drive. However, when they were introduced to a new rat, aka the novelty factor of having a new sexual partner, all of a sudden their sex drive turned back on and they were initiated to have sex again. And as we kind of dive into that concept in terms of a biological understanding, it would make sense when a male is presented an opportunity to spread their seed, that given a new opportunity with a new female, that would initiate the sex drive again. And this is true for women as well, like it said, but to a lesser extent. And this is not just exclusive to heterosexual males. This is true for homosexual, bisexual men as well. Instigating that sex drive and having the novelty factor initiate the dopaminergic system in our brain of seeking new experience, that turns on whether we're gay, straight, or bisexual. So just to illustrate the point that that porn is sort of this idea of seeking novelty. And so here we have more on the Coolidge effect. So the Coolidge effect describes the reinitiation of sexual behavior in a sexually satiated animal in response to a novel receptive mate. Like I said, when the rats were introduced to a new mate after having already been satiated and rejecting a previous advance by another mate that they've already had sex with, that the new mate created novelty in the brain, and the sex drive was turned back on again. And so the shocking results right here, this is what they concluded in the study, is that access to the second novel female rejected in renewed copulation in every subject. This happened with every single rat that they had tested, was that there was this renewed copulation to the new mate that was presented to them after already having reached a point of satiation, which is a fun word to say. So this is the idea of the dessert stomach. And this part is not scientific. This is something that I would talk about as a child after having eaten food. After having eaten my dinner, my parents would ask me, well, are you too full for ice cream? And I would always say, no, my regular stomach is full, but my dessert stomach is still empty. And although I don't have two stomachs, I do have a part of my brain that is seeking novelty. So this was also in the results of the test as well, is that humans and animals reject food on which they were not fed to satiety and ingest other foods that had not been eaten. So there's this idea within the dopaminergic system, and it's not an idea, it's actually a biological fact that we seek novelty, whether it's food, whether it's new mates, new experiences, new cars, buying new things. The dopamine system is primed to seek novelty. That's what it is. And so this idea of the dessert stomach, or this idea of introducing new flavors and new tastes, is something that keeps the dopamine system functioning, and it keeps it moving forward. And it has a positive effect on our species. It's something that has kept us alive, but it also has a negative or a shadow side as well, which is that it creates addiction to novel experiences that produce high amounts of dopamine. So this is to get at the idea that watching pornography is synonymous with novelty seeking, that watching pornography is playing on this novelty seeking aspect of our brains. And to get at this point a little bit further, I found this interesting article on Reddit that I'm going to read to you that really illustrates this point, and then we're going to talk about it. But the topic of this thread, thanks to Seer167, is that novelty seeking is the addiction, not the pic or the video. So novelty seeking is the addiction. It's not necessarily the pic or the video, even though that's the thing that's presenting the dopamine. It's the novelty seeking. And this story does a very good job illustrating that. So after having some good 20-day, 30-day no-fap streaks in the last 3 months, I've relapsed 4 times in the last 6 days. Already feeling as if I'm depleted all my energies, but I'm sure the urges will be back again tonight. I did an experiment last night. I opened up one of the most arousing pictures, the ones I've fapped many times, and wanted to see if I could stare at it for half an hour straight without touching. I basically wanted to see what exactly happens in my brain and mind when I look at an arousing picture, or that's what my addictive brain tricked me to believe. And you know what happened? Not even 2 minutes passed, and the supposedly most arousing picture was boring. My mind was thinking about other pictures, started fantasizing. I found that it was mostly thinking about the next website where I can get the next picture from, not the one in front of it. I spent the next 3 hours with my right hand continuously clicking, my left hand fapping. So just to speak on this real quick, obviously that is the addictive brain tricking an individual into, once again, just looking at something like pretending that this is an experiment, but really it's a way to watch pornography again, and he acknowledges it as well. So I strongly advise you do not try this experiment, especially those who are having a good no-fap streak. You will miserably fail with this experiment. You may get it right once, but the next day or 2 days later, you will surely relapse. And one more thing I want to note here is that I've eaten a lot of sweets in the past 7 days, and that might have contributed to the dopamine seizure or whatever. So down here, he says the addiction is not so much about the pic or the video, it's the kick your mind gets in planning for the next. And so why this is so extremely important is that there is an aspect within our brains that gets a kick from visualizing, from fantasizing, from being a part of, or looking at, or like thinking about the next. And that's where the dopamine is actually at the highest, is the thinking about. And then when the reward comes, the dopamine is satisfied. And so it's in the fantasy, it's in the thinking about that that novelty comes, and that comes in sort of this idea of creating newness or creating mystery. And so to speak to the pornography addiction as novelty seeking and how that affects the brain. And so here's a graph. If you've seen in my other videos, I like to bring this graph up a lot. So we have different axes here. So on the bottom, we have the hours after the ingestion of a substance or the use of an activity. And then we have the amount of dopamine that it produces. So up top, we have an amphetamine, extremely sharp increase with a decline afterwards. Cocaine, very similar, a little bit longer of a rise and a little bit harsher of a fall as well. Sex right here, we have a sharp increase, but then the satiation, the falling off. Food is down here. And so sex is the highest naturally producing dopamine activity that humans have, obviously, because it leads to procreation. And then porn here, as you can see, is, from what I can tell here, is a little bit higher, if not the exact same as sex. So not only is porn higher than sex, but then it lasts longer as well. And as we can see here is that we have this novelty factor, which is that with the continued use in the just watching different images, that the satiation is completed, but then the novelty brings it back up, and watching different images is the way that porn keeps us tracked. And so the access to pornography today is completely absurd. And the amount of novelty, there's infinite, basically, amount of pornography that an individual could watch today. And that is not something that we as a human species have ever had access to in our entire lives. So this has a direct effect on our dopaminergic system. Unlike drugs and other substances that most people have access instantly to getting high off of pornography whenever they want. Whereas other drugs might cost money, and obviously some pornography to cost money as well. And some people do lose a lot of money through the use of pornography and sex addiction. However, porn, for the most part, can be accessed very freely. And obviously it has this long-term effect on the brain as well with the novelty seeking. And so just some statistics as well. I brought this up before, but just want to reiterate how much porn are we watching. Men ages 18 to 30, almost 80%, nearly 4/5 of all men ages 18 to 30 are currently watching pornography. So that means every 4 out of 5 men you see walking down the street ages 18 to 30 is watching pornography. And then this number declines to 2/3, ages 39 to 49, and then declines again 50 to 68. There are probably several factors for this. One of them being that this generation has, the ages 18 to 30 have had more access to pornography just growing up. So there's more likely that they got hooked at an early age, whereas the other generations didn't quite have that same access to pornography. However, there could be some other factors to the decrease as well. It's just over time, maybe hormonal drop, and then also just people getting their lives together as time moves forward. So definitely some interesting statistics here, but just want to reiterate that in the last month, 79% of men ages 18 to 30 used pornography. So that's extremely drastic, and that number is not to be taken lightheartedly. And that is definitely having a huge effect on our culture and how our society views men and women and sex today. And it's programming our brains. So a couple solutions here. Quitting addiction is not about willpower. Quitting addiction is not about going necessarily cold turkey and just white knuckling it. And also an individual who does quit pornography and then relapses or watches pornography again, this isn't a failure of willpower in any way. This is an addiction, and an addiction is a protective measure for the brain to try and keep the species, the human, alive. And so to acknowledge that this addiction is serving a purpose, and served a purpose at one point of keeping the human alive. So the way to work with addiction is not necessarily to discipline it and to become really strict about it. The way to work with it is to nurture it and to learn to be gentle to oneself. And ultimately, we can't have a conversation about pornography without talking about shame. And shame is the emotion that says that I'm unworthy. Ultimately, I'm unworthy of love. And so the healing for pornography addiction is love, is learning to love ourselves. And even learning to love the part of ourselves that wants to watch pornography, and learning what that part may need from us in terms of addiction is usually some form of seeking connection, in a way, connection to self, connection to others, and going about it in a way that maybe isn't extremely healthy. So remembering that this is a process and it's progress, not perfection. Individuals who quit any addiction are very likely to relapse. It's just a part of the process. When I first tried to quit pornography, it took me several attempts until I eventually got a streak and was able to quit pornography. Ultimately, I've been clean from pornography for the last several years now, and pornography is something that does take time to work with. Perhaps starting with a simple goal of a week, or learning to mitigate your pornography usage to a couple times a month or a certain day of the week. Putting some boundaries on it so that it's not just completely free reign. Those are definitely some helpful tips. And then perhaps trying a month at some point, no fap November, or trying to at least get 30 days under your belt for just one time, just to see how it goes and see how your brain feels after that. And then over time, if it is something that calls you to eventually quit, that you can make that step and live a healthier life. And so a couple of other tips as well is to delete unfollowing triggering accounts. So unfollow anything on social media that instantly triggers you. That means unfollowing friends on Instagram if they post seductive photos. That means unfollowing Facebook. That means perhaps not even using social media if that's too much of a trigger for you. That means every time an ad comes on for YouTube or social media, that if there's triggering content, that you block it. And you learn to do that, and especially when it comes to just provocative content as well. This one I do not say lightheartedly. Go into the woods, make life an adventure, and reset your dopamine. That's a huge part of the suffering that comes with addiction, is that we lose sight of what's really important in our life. And so I wrote here, I do not mean this lightly. Part of the reason you're watching pornography is because there is a lack of authentic connection to yourself. You're out of alignment. Go back into nature, plan a 2 to 3 day camping trip, and leave your phone behind. And obviously, if you need to go out and do a quick hike, that's a great start. But see what you're doing this weekend or the next weekend, and maybe just plan a 2 or 3 day trip. Just drive somewhere by yourself, or maybe with some friends. I really do recommend alone if you're looking to make some serious change in your life. And yeah, just bring some food and a journal and get real with yourself, and find out what your soul has for you in the wilderness. it would be really important to do that. And then obviously working with a specialist or a group. So working one-on-one with a therapist or a specialist like myself, and then finding a group of other like-minded men or women who are also addicted to pornography. If you can't find that, the SAA, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous, and SLAA, which is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, have online groups which you can access, and I will link in the description down below. They meet every single day as well. So if you're looking for an online group, those two are fantastic ways to work with your own pornography addiction and to work with individuals who are working with something with you. So if you are currently working through porn addiction and you're looking for help, you can actually click below and schedule a free call with me. We can talk about an action plan and how to start working with your pornography addiction. So we can, on these calls, we can explore your root cause of your addiction. We can rediscover meaning and connection in your life, and we can learn how to develop healthy and meaningful relationships and really get you to where you want to get. So if that's something that calls to you, feel free to click link in the description below and set up a call with me. And then finally, like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that if you could help get these videos into YouTube's algorithm and help other men who are maybe struggling out there as well with pornography addiction. Your like and subscription to this channel actually helps other people, and it's a form of service. So I would really appreciate that. And thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and you got this. Take care.